Alrighty, everybody. It is Monday, March 22nd, 2021. The NCAA Championships just finished up this weekend. A long weekend right here, hunkered down in the studio. David, how was it from your perspective?
Man, it was different following it from there than it would have been being in person. But I mean, we got to watch a ton of wrestling. It was awesome. I mean, the tournament, there's so much drama. It was great.
I love going to the tournament, and I want to go back again next year. But it was almost like easier to follow, and I did definitely got to watch more wrestling here than trying to run guys down and get interviews and do all that. So
yeah,
it's interesting to see how we approach it next year from a whole team here at Flow. But let's bring our first guest on. Our guest today, Jason Borrelli. He's the head coach at Stanford. We are trying to keep Stanford wrestling. He's trying more than anybody probably. But one, congratulations on Shane winning a national title too. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, thanks. Yeah, appreciate you having us on. And I wouldn't say I'm trying as hard as anybody. I think I am trying extremely hard, but I'm equally as hard our alumni and our supporters are trying. So I think we're all at the top. But there's a lot of people behind this effort, and we appreciate the outpouring of support.
Yeah, and it's been, man, there's been tons, and from the ESPN time to the challenge and wearing the sweatshirt, and you said the arena was cheering. It sounds awesome. And if I remember correctly, we chatted a few months back, and I think you were on a golf course when you got a call saying the program was going to be cut. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. And it was a weird season anyways, right? COVID, it can't start till January. What would I guess, can you summarize this season and I don't have to go in depth. We can get in depth as you want, but just the COVID part mixed in with everything you're dealing with, trying to save the program, with trying to run the program and go have practices and get ready for wrestling.
Yeah, well, wild year, and honestly, hats off to the wrestling community, all the other coaches, but all the health professionals and everybody, and the NCAA for pulling off a tournament, right? Like that's I remember back to how heartbroken we all were a year ago, right? And to get to this point, for us to have finished a national championship feels amazing, and so many people were behind that. And thank you to all them, and just tip of the hat there. But challenging, I guess, specifically for us, I would say, it's not like oh, poor us, and oh, feel bad for Stanford. But the reality of it is, our student athletes, man, they went through so much, and I'm so happy for for Shane, for Jaden Abas, for all the guys that wrestled at the national tournament, for our alumni, because of what we went through. Just to give you guys a little background of just like what happened on our end. Of course, yes, we're in a pandemic, and so that's hard on everybody. But you guys, the announcement of cutting the program, right? So that changes so much for our student athletes, because now they're thinking about their future, right? Do they want to stay at Stanford? Do they want to go somewhere else? Do they want to try to get their degree? We had a number of guys that, Shane being one of them, who wanted to make sure that he got his degree in the chance that we aren't successful at this. So guys like Real Woods, a handful of guys are trying to graduate from Stanford in 3 years. And so that's been extremely hard, because they've had to just absolutely, really, 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 increase their workload in the classroom, right, to be able to graduate by the end of this coming summer in 3 years, so they can transfer as a grad transfer. So you got guys dealing with that, right? And then there's our coaching staff trying to keep everybody together. But what on top of that, what made things challenging for us is that our county, where we are in California, was so restrictive that when we came back to campus, we were first allowed to come back in early November. We were practicing for 2 weeks, and then the county shut down, and they only were going to allow activities outside. And so right after Thanksgiving, starting after Thanksgiving, we practiced outdoors in groups of 6, because that was all the county would allow us to have contact activity with. So we had to do 4 groups of 6 outside from the end of November until January 23rd, when we finally were approved to start competing. So we were practicing under the football lights, outside on the field hockey turf, moving mats around. It was just a circus, and it's anywhere from 50 degrees to 60 degrees. It's cold, it's windy, it's drizzling and rain, and it was just a wild time. And trying to keep the guys' spirits high was hard, but they did a remarkable job. And then we still hadn't even been approved to compete because our county didn't allow contact activity outside of your group of 6 until about the beginning of January. And at that time, if you left the county and engaged in contact activity, you couldn't come back to the county and return to contact activity. So to make a long story short, we got approved about the 15th or 16th of January to have a 15-day fully on the road competitive season. And so we left on the 23rd of January, came back or finished on February 8th, and that was all we got to compete. And once we went on the road, we had to stay on the road because we couldn't come back to the county. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to go back to any contact activity and training. So it was just wild, right? It was wild. I can't tell you like how amazing our student athletes were during all this time because, they stuck with us. They believed in the process. And then to have it culminate with Shane winning a national title was awesome. So
was there any,
and on top of that, I would say the other thing, they couldn't leave for Thanksgiving. They couldn't leave for Christmas. So these guys went from November until the national tournament, the day after the national tournament, without seeing their families either. So didn't get to go home at all for anything. So it was just a tough year for them, and really makes us all really proud of them. So.
Was there any point that had any athletes that you had that wanted to leave? Say, hey, I don't know. I'm just I want to get out of here because I don't know what the future leads. And those conversations of however they went, trying to keep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
there were. I mean, there were guys that not only let me back up. Wanted to leave and compete somewhere else this season. No, we immediately. Really started talking to our guys shortly after the announcement and at least all through the end of the summer and into the fall about, sticking with us. We need everyone to stay together. Let's finish what we started. Let's do this together as a family. Let's be there for one another. And so nobody, there were really no discussions about anyone leaving and representing another school this year. Any of those things were put to rest really quickly during the beginning parts of the announcement. But there were a lot of guys who weren't sure they wanted to compete and train and go through everything necessary to put themselves into position. And it took a lot of work from the coaching staff to stay in those guys' ear, keep them motivated, talk to them about, why it's important that they stick through the training, that they don't give up. We're going to have a season because there's so much uncertainty, right? A lot of these guys, we were supposed to start competing on January 1. That got taken away. Then we were going to start on January 8th. No. Then we were going to start on January 15th. No. And then not until, like I said, a few days before January 23rd, where we approved to do a 15-day road trip, out on the road. And that was going to be our entire regular season. So we had to fit everything into a 15-day window. And so a lot of guys just didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it took a lot of work by our staff of, keeping the guys motivated and excited. And just about everybody went through their struggles, to stay motivated and to stay engaged.
One of the guys that didn't get to compete until the postseason was Real Woods. And I mean, talk about his situation, because not only is there all this other madness going on, you guys are jumping through hoops, practicing outside and all this 15-day competition window, but there's also this bizarre 4-match rule where, like, for some reason, arbitrarily, the NCAA decides like you have to have four matches to earn an auto qualifying bid. So then he has to go get these extra matches after the conference tournament. What was that process like? What were those conversations like with you guys in Bakersfield? And what was Owl's situation like?
Yeah, well, Real's situation, and it was unique in itself. The announcement it really impacted Real when he found out they were discontinuing the program. He was one, like many others, but he was one that struggled with it. His thing, he had wanted to be at Stanford for ever since he was little, and it had a hard. It really was hard on him, and the focus became at that point: how does he graduate? How does he get the degree in 3 years? And it was going to be a lot of work. So Real had chose to spend the good majority of the season and really possibly all of the season, to be honest with you, just focusing on school, and nobody faulted him for that. We wanted to help him get his degree. He was taking, we're a quarter system, so we don't do semesters. We do, 4 academic quarters make up the year. There's a fall, winter, spring, and summer. Most kids don't take classes in the summer, so generally 3/4 a year you're taking classes. But he had to overload significantly in the fall, the winter, the spring, and he's going to have to take summer classes as well and take just a crazy amount of units to try to graduate in 3 years. But we were supportive of that, and so we were letting him just focus on school, and he did that in the fall and did that in most of the winter, and he's going to take a ton of units in this spring and summer too. But it's hard because I want him to get his degree. I want him to finish, and I want to be supportive of what's important to him. So we just gave him his space. And then eventually, when we started having serious talks about him wanting to train and come back and wrestle, he had some other issues, and he wasn't going to be able to be cleared to compete. And you might be able to connect the dots there of what may have happened. We're in a pandemic for a reason, and there's people can get sick, right? And so he was out, and he actually didn't get cleared medically until shortly before our conference, and just wasn't where he needed to be physically and just timing wise, wrestling, everything, and it showed. And but there was a significant difference between where he was at our conference and getting 2.5 more weeks of training, right, and getting to get himself collected. And so he went through a lot. Really glad that he was able to get back and represent us and be with our team and go through everything and be a part of it. But just he was in a challenging time. He was dealing with a lot, and I don't fault him, and no one on our coaching staff faults him for that. He was trying to focus on school, and he thought that was the right thing. And then when he realized wrestling was something he wanted to do and he could do both, we tried to make the most of it. And so proud of him for putting it on the line.
Yeah, his progress from conference weekend to NCAA's was crazy. It would have been awesome to see with just a couple more weeks. But yeah, I mean, beats Grant Willits, who had beat him at the conference tournament, and then a crazy sudden victory match with Dom Demas. Man, he's still, even without all the training that he put in, he's still super dangerous. It was fun to watch.
I'm worried about, or not worried about, I'm curious about from your perspective, things are just going wrong, right? Or they're just not going right, one thing after another. And you say we really had to work with the kids to keep their spirits up, and they're getting. Well, what about you or the coaching staff? Like, you guys are human, you have emotions, and it sucks. And like, did you ever get not like you're gonna throw your hands up and quit, but discouraged and however else you want to categorize it?
I definitely think, had its challenges, right, for my staff and for me. I have just so much respect for Ray Blake, Alex Tirapelli, Kerry McCoy, everyone involved on our staff, even our athletic trainer, Sanam, just so positive and so encouraging and so optimistic, and it makes things easier when you come to work every day and everyone's excited about what they're doing and has full belief in the ability to change the decision and is on the same page. Like, it just makes it easier. So, I decided early on, as did the staff, that we were committed to this, to fight this fight, really for as long as it's necessary. We will keep fighting regardless of what happens here in the short term or whatever. We'll stay involved in the fight, for moving forward until the program's reinstated. But we certainly were committed to this season, and that's what we asked of our athletes. Commit to through the NCAA tournament. Stay committed to what you signed up for, what we believe in, what our goals are. This family, stay committed to it. Let's do this for our family, for the wrestling family, right? We're not talking about anything other than that. The wrestling family at Stanford. Stay committed, and we all were on board. And so it's been pretty easy to stay motivated and stay forward focused, and haven't thought a lot about the future. Yes. There are times when you're sitting with your wife and you're watching your kids run around and you're starting to think what might be next or what could happen, because we're living and we have to think about that. But I've just been trying to be laser focused on giving everything to the guys that want this season to be meaningful, and that's what we did.
You talked about practicing outside, things getting canceled, figuring out how to have a 15-day road trip to make up your season. While you're doing all that, I'm sure there's still other things you're doing on the other side to work to save the program, to raise money, to convince whoever you have to convince. What were those things, and how challenging is that, juggling all the other crazy logistics?
Yeah, well, thankfully we have a village of people helping, right? So yes, I was involved in doing things that I could, but we have just a powerful group of alumni and supporters and parents of our student athletes. The parents of our student athletes are remarkable as well. Everybody wanted to help. So it really allowed the coaches, it allowed me, it allowed Ray, it allowed Alex and Carrie and everybody involved to just do our jobs, and that was so awesome. So the Keep Stanford Wrestling committee and those who are on that board, but that spans broader than those 12. I mean, there's thousands of people doing stuff, volunteer work, helping, and it was just such a remarkable feeling to be able to focus a lot on on the guys and just have to give alumni, supporters, and parents a little bit of direction. Or hey, we can't do that right now. We've got a really important week, and so although there was a lot going on, and I'm privy to everything, because we were having, there are meetings multiple times a week where we're staying looped in with all the co-chairs and the chairs of different committees. We didn't have to do all of that on a daily level. We could focus on the development of the guys, which was great.
I know that, over the weekend, as the story of Stanford wrestling seemed like it was reaching more and more people's eyes and ears, largely because Shane did so well and had that platform. There's a lot of anger. People are upset at Stanford, as I think they are justified to be. What is it like being in your position where I'm sure you feel those frustrations as well, but you also want to have a long-term, productive working relationship with the athletic department and upper administration and everybody else? What's it like balancing the frustration with also hoping in the long term that you continue to work together with some of these people and heal this thing?
Yeah. Well, my thing is I've been extremely honest with our administration and my sport administrator, who I talk to regularly. When I get a chance to talk to the athletic director or anybody, I tell them that I don't agree with the decision, and I think there's a better way. And I'm not going to hide from facts, and I'm not going to hide from my feelings, right? Just because I work in the department and I've been here for 13 plus years and value so many things about it, and I think that this was not the right decision. I don't think it was handled well, and I hope that they are okay with that, being able to disagree. Right? That's life, right? But be honest with us, right? You make a decision, tell us the real reasons, or if the reasons you state are accurate, and we can solve those problems. Why can't we exist, right? If you say it's finances, and we show you that we can take care of the finances, or that the finances maybe aren't what they were led to believe, tell us the real reason. Or, if it's competitive excellence, like you state, and we can prove that we can be competitive, why can't we exist? So for us, that's what's frustrating to everybody. So I wouldn't say the relationship is anything other than, I'll be honest with them and I'll tell them. And I've told my AD from day one, I'm going to remind him every single day that he needs to keep the program, but not just wrestling. There's a way to keep all the sports, all 11. We can do this. Come to us, ask us, talk to us. Let's find a creative solution. Let's problem solve. It's not just push people away during a pandemic because it seems easy. That's the easy answer, right? Things got hard, so let's just get push them away. For me, it's and so they know how I feel, and I don't know what that means to them, but for me and so many other alumni and supporters and people, we want the truth, we want transparency, and if the truth is what you're saying, let's find us a creative solution, and we feel like we have. So let's come together, let's work on this. And right now, we're not getting anyone to come to the table, and it's disappointing.
Hats off to you, because a lot of people in this position would not only state how they feel, they would get really worked up and want to come unglued. And here's Jason calm and cool and I respectfully disagree. I think it's wrong. How often do you get an opportunity to have these conversations with your immediate boss or the AD or whoever's ever making these decisions? And when you say, hey, we raise the money, hey, here is our athletic excellence, what kind of answers are you getting? Or do you not get to have those conversations often enough?
Yeah. Okay. So I have had email correspondence with our president. I have not spoken to him in person. Same with our provost. However, our alumni group, along with the 36 Sports Strong group, which is a group of alumni that represent all 36 sports at Stanford. Our alumni, a few from them, have had a meeting with our provost, so they have met personally with her. And then with the athletic director, numerous alumni donors have met with him, and I have met with him face-to-face numerous times and had meetings. And then my supervisor, our deputy athletic director, I meet with very regularly, who's overseeing the program for this year. But interestingly, when the meeting with the provost happened, the takeaway from there was, our alumni group, along with the supporters of 36 Sports Strong, presented, after looking into the finances, looking into a hard dig on the numbers, showed how, the elimination of these sports actually is not even coming close to solving the financial deficit that we're running, and really it's so minimal that it doesn't make any sense. And if you took the money that we're presenting, it actually solves the problem in a big way, right? It actually is a net positive. If you take the $12.5 million from wrestling plus the $40 million from all 11 sports, the finances just don't make sense. And they have not disputed that. And just I think the response was from our provost was, I can't give you answers. I can't give you the answers that you want. And so that's why people are upset. Well, it's like, you owe us the answers. What's the issue, right? What's really going on? And our athletic director has told us that it's they've chosen to narrow their focus. I think his direct words to me and my coaching staff on our last call together was, they've chosen to narrow their focus, and anything would get, anything beyond the 25 sports that they've chosen to focus on now would be a distraction and get in the way. And they don't want that. And to hear that, is incredibly gut-wrenching and hard to say, hey, we just want to exist. We will take care of ourselves financially. But also we feel like our student athletes feel important. We are important. But to be told that, your mere existence would be a distraction from what the focus is going forward is, think of that. Think of when you hear that as a coach or as an athlete. It's like, well, so I'm not important. I don't know. It's hard to hear. So those are the only things that I know from, asking questions and talking to certain people. And it's incredibly disappointing to hear.
If I'm an employee working for one of the 25 sports that's going to be sticking around, and I'm watching this whole thing happen with you guys and the other 10 sports that are being cut, I would have a hard time not recognizing that my employer will at times decide to make a decision and say that there's a rationale for that decision, and then when all of the problems are solved, they'll still hold their ground and not allow you to address that. That's a situation between an employer and an employee that would be really hard to watch happen, because when will somebody just decide that I'm not the person that they want in there, or that they're just going to put their foot down, something related to my position? Have you had conversations with people that are in the other sports, football, basketball, whatever, who are seeing this happening? And if so, what do those people think?
Yeah, great question. Yes, I have had many conversations, very close to most all the coaches from all the other sports, and they're extremely sympathetic behind the scenes. They're supportive, but they're in a tough spot, and I think kind of the messaging is a lot of them are being led to believe that this is going to be helpful, more beneficial to them long term. Their programs, their student athletes are hearing that too. That when there's going to be more to give now, or more to go around to the sports that they're keeping, and so it's challenging too, because maybe some coaches don't want to say anything because maybe they feel like their programs could be next up. I don't know. If things don't get better or if something happens, so they're in a tough spot. I have great relationships and admire many of them, but it's hard for them to really be outspoken about it. Now they all are sympathetic to me personally and privately, which I appreciate. But when you feel like something's wrong, my hope, and I think that everyone would hope this too, if they were in our situation, is that if you feel like something's wrong, demand transparency, but also be willing to speak up against it. Right? If you feel like this isn't right, or there's a better way, really that's what it is. Is maybe at the end of the day, um, maybe the athletic department genuinely feels like this has to happen for them to be successful moving forward. Well, that's okay for them to think that, but let's show them that there's actually a better way. There's something they may have overlooked. There are people that are willing to fund these sports. There are people that are willing to, we can get creative about this. And so I would hope people would, one, demand transparency and honesty, but two, stand up and speak out against it. Don't be shy. That's not a lot to ask, right? When something seems wrong or doesn't seem right, just speak up against it. It's easy.
When it all started, and the money and the athletic excellence, or at least those are two of the variables, did they give a number? Hey, you guys need to raise this, and that's why, and it's too expensive.
Well, the initial press release from the beginning was this decision's final. No amount of philanthropy will change this decision. So that was like the immediate release. And of course, yes, they're going to say that, right? Because they're hoping that people just read that and just are like, okay, they go on their way. There's nothing we can do. But most of us are smart enough to know that's not true. If this is think about this. If it's about money, right? If your number one thing is that the financial situation is so bleak and is so bad that we've had to make these decisions because of finances, but no amount of money is going to overturn the decision. Those don't add up, right? So they contradict each other right away. So I read into that. It's like, well, of course there's an amount of money that's going to work. So let's just figure out what the money is. And so then we started talking to them, and after so much pressure, because people didn't know about these cuts, people weren't informed. Alumni didn't know. No one was asked. It just happened. Yeah. People were like, well, whoa, wait a minute. And there was a big uproar. And so then they said, well, we'll bring all 11 sports back. We're not going to take any individual sports, but we'll take all 11 for $200 million. And actually, we asked right away, well, can you show us the numbers? Where'd you come up with $200 million? Can you show us the figures for every sport so that we can understand what a full endowment would look like for each sport? Give us the full expenses. We'll calculate an endowment that will cover those full expenses, and then we'll figure that out for each sport and see if that $200 million is right. Turns out that wasn't even close. Where they came up with that number, your guess is as good as mine, right? So pushed on that, and we had got to a point where they had it openly admitted that, okay, if a sport program individually can raise enough money to endow themselves and solve our gender equity issue, we will have to entertain that reinstatement. We can't guarantee it, but we'll entertain it. And so, right? It's like, so for us, there's no set amount of money because honestly, we don't even think it's about that. Right? We don't even think it's about the finances. We've proven that. We can self-endow our program individually. Others can as well. We've raised enough money to solve financial problems collectively. So I don't think it's really about that, but we don't know what it is about. So we haven't been given any specific numbers. It started with no amount. It's shifted all over. And to be honest, all we've figured out is we think it's not even really about that.
To the point of the gender equity part, was there ever thought of, hey, we'll start a women's program and we'll raise 12, we'll raise 20, we'll raise whatever, and then that's those two things you talked about, the money and the gender equity problem. Then they have to at least take a look at us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, 100%. And then from the get-go, integrating a women's program into this has been like a no-brainer. Right, we feel like we should have been on a women's program years ago, and not that it wasn't in our mind. We've talked about that as a staff, but there was no appetite within the athletic department to pursue another women's sport. But for us now, we think it would be harder to start a full-fledged women's program in midst of cutting 11 sports, which included women's sports. So sure. It would be harder to say, let's endow men's wrestling and let's start a women's, and then we'll bring those back. I mean, because then you still have 10 other sports that just got dropped that you're leaving out. So our thought was, let's integrate the women. Let's come up with a solution where in the first few years we can roster women on the men's team, have them training, they can compete in women's events, and it's an integrated team, right? And then over time, we will work to start a women's team through the club process on campus, get a club program going, get and then eventually move that up to varsity level. And so we put together a plan for that, but. And we were raising a lot of money, and that's why we got to $12.5 million. And we actually have kind of pumped the brakes a little bit, I guess, so to speak, on the fundraising, simply because as we started doing this and we were raising all this money, we started realizing that maybe it's not completely about the money, and we don't think it is. And so, although we still are fundraising, we're trying to figure out what the real reasons are, right? Because we think if we raise $30 million. That they'll still sit in there. There's just no amount of money, right? So what is the reason? Because we want to fight we want to try to figure out what the real reason is so that we can attack that and not spend all our time on the reasons that aren't real.
Sure. So back to this season, right? What was it like going to NCAAs? What was it like going to St. Louis for you, for the athletes? I'm sure, just like everywhere else, other coaches came up and showed support.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, the support was great, but I was just excited for the opportunity to wrestle at the national championship, and I was really impressed with the feel. Although there weren't 19,000 fans in there, there was only 3,000 or whatever it was. It still got loud. It still had the same feel to some degree, and that was exciting. There was just that. When you walked in there for the first time, you saw the mats down. It was awesome. So that was great. And then so happy for our guys. They did wrestle really, really, really hard, and so proud of them. And then to end with Shane, end with a bang was so cool. And man, I can't say enough great things about Shane. He's just an awesome human, and so cool, calm, collected, and just so mature. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
The black singlets. Whose idea was that?
Well, it really started with us presenting a question to the guys. We had discussions at the beginning part of the year. What are we doing this for? What are we all here? Why are we here? Why are we back? Why are we giving up our holidays? Why are we living on campus? Why are we willing to test 8 to 9 times a week? That's another thing. Our testing regimen was absolutely crazy. We were doing 3 PCR tests a week, and we had to antigen test every day that we did contact activity, which could be as much as 6 days a week. So we were doing, on the high end, 9 times a week testing, and on the low end, I think about 7 times a week, because we were always doing 3 PCRs, and we generally did practice at least 4 or 5 times a week. So we were testing at a minimum 7 days a week, and on a high end 9 times a week, all the way from November until the NCAA tournament. As a matter of fact, at the NCAA tournament, you guys, we were the only team that had to get in vehicles and go to the local hospital and take PCR tests while everyone else was just antigen. So we had to do all the daily antigen tests, and our school was making us go to the hospital. Actually, on the day of competition, on Thursday, the first day in between sessions, we had to go to a hospital and do PCR tests. So that's wild too, right? But back to your I guess, what was the original question?
Black singlets.
Vaccine. So at the beginning of the year, we were asking, why are we doing all this? And it was for the family. It was for the wrestling family, the wrestling community, the wrestling family. And we kind of started talking about, how could we show that? How could we do that? And so it was, the guys were saying, let's wrestle with black singlets. Let's not have the logos on them, and let's wrestle for us, for the family. And also, of course, it'll stir some, it'll cause people to ask questions, and we can explain that. And so that was what they wanted. They wanted to wrestle in all black singlets, and we were like, okay, we support that. And if that is what makes you feel comfortable and that allows you to not be distracted, let's go for it. So we did it.
That literally made the hair on my arm stand up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So much adversity. I mean, crazy to think about competing with that much adversity. And talk about Jaden Abas. A little more adversity. He loses first round, and now he's got to come all the way back, and he becomes an All-American. Talk about Jaden's tournament, his performance, and just what the experience was like coaching him through that tournament.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because you can kind of get drowned out by what Shane did, but Jaden had an awesome tournament, and so happy for him. So happy. If everyone just knew how diligent he is with his training and preparation and how much it means to him, you'd be floored. He is a guy who is in the room early, stays after, is working on technique, is doing pull-ups, push-ups, rope climbs, is stretching, is asking a coach, going over things that he was, beat on in practice or struggling with. He is like that guy, that mat rat, that guru. Leading up to conference, we were trying to do some things. Leading up to the nationals, we were doing a lot of extra stuff with Real Woods because he had just was so far behind, right? And Jaden was the guy that's like, he was doing like pulling 2-a-days leading up to nationals, and we were worried. I was like, no, this might be too much. We need to be backing off. And he's like, I feel great. Let's keep going. I won't go as hard, but I want to work on the technique. Just he just loves wrestling. He loves wrestling. So to see that come to fruition, right? Lose first round, battle all the way back, and then wins his placing match twice, really. The match against Murin, he gets the takedown. Then they review it. He's already taken his ankle bracelets off, and it has to put him back on and go re-wrestle and win again. That's tough in itself. That's like, you got to be mentally tough to do that, right? In your placing match, win, think you won, take the bands off, then put them back on and go again. Man, it was awesome. Love Jaden, and just so happy for him because it means a lot to him. And to do it the hard way, to earn it, to really earn it, to lose first round, come all the way back is so cool. So cool.
Obviously, in the finals, there was a lot of eyes on Stanford and Shane and everybody. But even throughout the tournament, any given year, there's an upset specialist who's unseeded or seated low, starts to make a run, and the whole crowd gets behind him, right? Did you feel like that with your team this year with most of your guys? And there's only 3,000 fans, but could you feel the support from the fans every time a black singlet stepped on the mat?
Yeah, most definitely. And even in the back, the other coaches were real supportive and wishing us luck and, congratulating us after wins and after things. So we felt it. And I think that's what's special about the wrestling community. And, yes, we get after it and we're competitors and, in the corner, we're pointing fingers at other coaches and screaming and yelling. But at the end of the day, we all love wrestling and we want wrestling to exist. And, it kind of goes to, we're talking a lot about, the Keep Stanford Wrestling and Save Stanford Wrestling, but let's not forget Fresno State's going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Fresno State is fighting the same fight. And at the Nationals, they had an All-American, and they have an awesome story to tell. How about this? The guy, that Parco is a 141-pounder and loses a wrestle-off to Lauren late in the season, has to go up to 49, and the guy makes a run and is an All-American. How awesome of a story, right? And so I felt the love, but I don't want to forget that, this is about wrestling. It's not just about Stanford wrestling. It's about, we want wrestling everywhere, and we need to come together and fight for one another and not be so, singular focused on just our programs. And that's actually, one thing I value about some coaches when we started going through all this. Some reached out right away and have really respected keeping a distance and not trying to poach guys or give guys pressure that are in the transfer portal and trying to decimate a team. I remember when Fresno first announced, the first thing I did was text all of our conference coaches and a lot of the coaches that I'm close to across the country and was like, hey, we need to encourage these guys to stay at Fresno because that might help that program if we can get them all to stay there. Now, some left and everyone has their reasons, and I don't fault them for that. But it's just, I think about how powerful that was for us when certain coaches were telling our athletes, you should stay at Stanford through this year. That showed me that there are some people that care more about the sport than their own personal, their personal interests. And that's what we need more of.
Yeah, that's big. I guess just kind of walk me through Saturday night. What was, we've seen the black singlets. I see you walk on stage dressed like Johnny Cash, but just... What do you remember from Saturday evening? Maybe specifically the match, maybe not.
Oh, I remember a lot. I remember everything. So that's one thing I really tried to work on is clarity, calmness, and clarity, and appreciating everything. Sometimes there's been big moments that I've experienced, and I just don't remember a lot of it. this time I was in the back, and I think some of it's because I had so much confidence in Shane that he was going to do well, that I wasn't just focused on him and thinking about, is he ready? Does he have his match tactics down, and going through everything? I was able to just like take everything in. So I had great clarity and I had great confidence walking up there, and was able to enjoy that moment and kind of be in the moment. And so I do remember just a lot. And I remember being with our team afterwards, and that's what probably like I'll remember more than standing on that stage is being at the Union Station with our team afterwards and celebrating with our team, with Shane and our coaching staff and everybody, the support staff, everybody who has been a part of this. That was equally as fun for me as watching Shane win. Just being with our family afterwards and seeing how happy they were, and being together. So that's what I'll remember.
There's being with the team and celebrating, and normally it's like you talk about the spring or what you're going to do until the summer. Like, I don't know. Maybe there wasn't even time or place to address that, but like, was there was this addressed at all in St. Louis after the tournament, the future and how?
Yeah, a little bit. And our guys and our family and our close knit knows the biggest moment that happened after that event back at the Union Station, and I'll let them, if they're listening or whatever, they'll have a smile on their face. But it was a special moment. There was a lot talked about, but we talked more about that when we were departing yesterday morning. When we and I guess it would have been Sunday before some of us went different ways. Some of our guys went straight home from St. Louis, but we had kind of like, what's next? Where are we going from here? But Saturday night at the Union Station, we had a good moment together, so it was great.
Awesome. If you care to elaborate, what is next, as far as the fight, as far as the program, as far as how do we really try to keep this thing? Well,
there's been a lot of great press. There's interviews, and what I've realized is I think the more we get this message outside of the wrestling community, because the wrestling community seems locked in and supportive, right? They seem like they want to carry this message and champion this cause to the end, and that's great. But we need to get the story of what's going on with Stanford athletics and these Olympic sports looked at more broadly, and that's the approach, is tell this story nationally to a different audience. And so we've been working on that. But for our team, it's get back this spring. Our guys are going to enjoy spring break, and I'm really excited. We have 20 guys that are committed to living on campus and continuing to train this spring. So they'll all be back at the beginning of April. So they're on spring break now, and then they'll come back for the spring quarter, and 20 of them are going to stay on campus and test every day and practice, and we'll get going in the spring. And Shane's one of those guys. Shane's going to come back and he's going to be in school. We're not taking classes in person, but he's going to come live on campus in his dorm and take remote virtual classes, but train. And so are the other guys. And that's exciting. So we're business as usual. We'll keep fighting the fight. There's a big board of trustees meeting on April 11th coming up where this is going to be a topic, and we've got at least on their agenda to re-look at this and see if maybe they missed something. I don't know what will come of that, but we will keep fighting the fight until we get them to come to the table and talk about a way to creatively solve their problems.
If the goal is to get this story in front of more people than just the wrestling community, it seems like Shane, did about as much as he could do on Saturday night by not only wrestling in the NCAA finals, wearing the black singlet. They're talking about it on the broadcast, but then, we talked about it before we started the show. There's a challenge at the end of regulation. So Shane goes over to the corner, puts on the shirt you got on right now, the Keep Stanford Wrestling shirt. It's like you could not ask for a better platform and stage than that. Do you get a sense that match has made any kind of impact, any kind of difference in getting this story in front of more than just the wrestling community?
Oh, no doubt. That was like how amazing was that? So tipping my hat to Keith Gavin or whoever threw the block in, right? Like, it almost seemed like that was planned. We couldn't ask for a better situation. So they throw the block, and then he gets to put sweatshirt on. The arena starts chanting, keep or save Stanford Wrestling. ESPN can't cut to a break because there's no outcome of the winner, so they have to film it all. It makes SportsCenter. I don't know if you guys were able to see a SportsCenter clip. They did about a 30-second segment with Shane walking out, showed him winning. They talked about how much money we've raised. It was like, and so that reached a different audience, right? And then you got people on Twitter blowing up outside of the wrestling community. There's a lot of people catching wind of it. So that was awesome. So thank you to the pit staff for doing that. That was awesome. No, but, and I also want to say how much, I don't know if you guys saw the tweet that they put out, the pit wrestling put out that, honestly, I was on the airplane and we were leaving, and I read that and I got pretty emotional, and I was just super appreciative of that and super classy. So, hats off to them and their staff for just being such a, gracious, opponent, but also, and when you're staring defeat, right? Like, you're looking into, the guy that beat you's eyes and you shake his hand on the podium. That's pretty awesome, right? Pretty cool. So
Definitely.
But I don't know how I think that moment did, kind of push us to another level of exposure, which is great. Actually, I was dropping my son off this morning at school down the road, and I had this sweatshirt on, and a couple parents saw it, and they had saw everything on ESPN on SportsCenter and started asking me about it. Random people, just here on campus. So it certainly had an impact. So it's awesome.
Heck yeah.
The program right now, as it stands, they're trying to cut it. If the movement moves from trying to keep Stanford Wrestling to trying to bring back Stanford Wrestling, what's the timeline there? When are they telling you guys right now that you're done, that the athletes are no longer student athletes and that you guys aren't coaches there anymore? What's the timeline?
Yeah. Okay, so I will say this first before I answer that. We have really shifted our cause. It is Keep Stanford Wrestling because we care about wrestling, but we're fighting under this 36 Sports Strong movement because the alumni of all sports at Stanford want all 36 sports to exist, and so that's really where we're going to battle. This is 36 Sports Strong. So we're fighting for all 11 sports, but looking at us as a sport, they haven't answered that completely. We were worried that we were going to come back from the NCAA tournament, doors might be locked, and they say, you're done, you're out of here. So we did push on that a little bit. And when they were willing to extend housing to our team through the spring, that was a huge moment for us because it meant our guys will be student athletes through the entire spring quarter, which ends in early June or mid-June. I think June 15th-ish or so is when our classes end, or roughly, maybe by a week I'm off there. But so we're going to have student athletes on campus training using the facilities through at least then. We do have guys taking summer classes, but we at least know we have till then. We're working on trying to figure out what it means for our coaching situation. Actually, all of our staff's contracts end on April 30th of this year. And so uncertain what the future holds for us, but we know our student athletes will have a place to train and be a part of this at least through the spring quarter. And so that's great, but we'll see what comes of the next few weeks, and we're trying to get answers to that.
Man, Jason, what a ride. COVID starts and everybody's like, oh, that sucks. And then it's like, that's only the tip of the iceberg. Like one after, I'm just picturing you guys like pulling mats underneath the stadium lights, or it's raining and you're wrestling, or you can't leave the county, and like just an amazing story capped off with Shane on Saturday night and Keith or whoever throwing the brick. It's pretty remarkable. I don't know. I'm through most of the things I wanted to ask you. I guess is there anything you got for us before we let you move on? Yeah.
No.
Well, how about this? What have you learned about yourself in the last 8 months?
I would just say I've learned how amazing the people I'm surrounded by are. That's they've triple stamped, double stamp on the just how awesome they are, and how what you can accomplish if you if you really stay committed to a situation, believe in those around you, and are willing to do something for for others and not just yourself. Like if you're doing something for a bigger cause, it's really incredible what can happen. And I've learned just so much about the people. The Stanford wrestling family, the wrestling community, to me is really amazing. And I've learned how awesome it is when you're surrounded by great people, and then how much can be accomplished when you're doing something for more than just yourself. And I genuinely believe Shane has goals in wrestling, and he believes that he can be an NCAA champion, but he also recognized what he was doing was for something more than himself, and I think that's what makes it equally as even that much more special.
Awesome. Man, I appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today. It's a wild story. Like, the more I talk to you, the more I feel like they're going to do the right thing, and they're going to let you solve the problems, or tell you what the problems are, and then you and all these amazing people behind you can work to solve it. So I guess I'd just say best of luck to you personally moving forward, to Stanford wrestling, to wrestling in general. And David, you got anything for me?
I just want to know if there's any other information that people who are watching this should know, or if there are any action items that the wrestling community should be thinking about.
Yeah, demand answers. Talk to our decision makers, right? The president, the provost, and the AD, and demand transparency. What's going on? Why if we solve the financial issue, why can't we exist? If we can prove that we're competitive, if we could, all these things, like, what is it? Like, it doesn't make sense. Stanford has prided themselves. They have been like they have been just the example of broad-based, of excellence in everything. They had 36 sports for so long and did so well, and it was something that we valued so much, and alumni just loved and relished in, this idea that we are broad-based and we do well in everything, and you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And all of a sudden, we just want to change what we stand for, what we are, what we were. We're changing that when there's a better. We don't have to. If you just come to us and let our alumni, let our supporters, let the people that care, help. Let them help, and we can figure this out. So that's what I would ask. Just if people do care and they really and they want wrestling to exist. I mean, this is, if Stanford wrestling doesn't exist, you have to ask yourself, what is West Coast wrestling going to look like in a few years, right?
Yeah.
What if it can go away at Stanford? What's to say the next one or two West Coast programs don't just throw the towel in, And so we need this, and we need the wrestling community to demand answers of why and what can we do, So.
When we're demanding answers, who do we tweet at? Whose inboxes do we send these questions to? Who are the one or two best people at Stanford in the admin to hit up about this?
Yeah, well, we have a couple posts online, and I don't have all their info memorized, but I would shoot positive and constructive messages to our athletic director, our provost, and our president, and you can find all their stuff online. It's pretty easy on the Stanford directory. So get their emails and ask them. And I would also say, if you get the general form letter back that's pre-populated or whatever, respond to that. Ask more questions, because that's what we're going to get, right? They're going to get thousands of emails, and they're going to hit reply with the same form letter, and it's well, that's not good enough. Let's tell me ask more questions and keep pressing the issue, because they want us to just go away quietly, and we won't go away until we understand the real reasons. And go
ahead.
No, go ahead. No, that's it. Go ahead.
Do you think they thought you would go away quietly? They would just say, do you think they're surprised by holy cow, these guys won't give up. They're in for a fight, and we didn't expect this. We just thought you're done, and that was that.
100%. We've heard that, and we know that to be true. That they're absolutely they're floored that this has carried on so long for all the sports, but particularly probably us as well. I mean, I think they're just they would have liked nothing more. And we actually asked this question early on to our athletic director. What do you expect us to do? And that the answer was maybe not verbatim, but pretty close. Was that we would all accept this and move on. That was what he had hoped.
They don't know wrestlers very well.
What was they expected like these, the sports to like fall in line, and what was the situation with the social media accounts? You guys like early on, whatever you had to, what did they ask of the departments to be able to keep access to the social media accounts?
Yeah, good. Well, they had locked us out, which really we didn't know why originally, and then the announcement came out, and so it seemed obvious why we were locked out of our accounts, right? And then a week or so, or a little bit of time went by, and we got an email saying we're ready to come up with a way to get you back using the accounts, and they had suggested or strongly encouraged maybe we put something out acknowledging the cuts, but we're ready to move forward or whatever. And I just responded back. I was like, that would not be accurate, and we do not accept. We vehemently deny, or I guess not deny, but we are adamantly opposed to this decision. Opposed to it. We do not agree with it, and until the program's reinstated, we don't even really care to use that account. We will shift and use. We will figure out a different way. And so I actually never got a response from that. After I said no, that we don't agree with the decision, and that anything stated to the contrary would be a lie, that just never heard from them. And so our alumni and our group just started using Keep Stanford Wrestling as our voice. And that is what it was, and it is what it is. I don't know, It's wild. That happened pretty early on, and we never used the platforms, which interestingly we had created. The Twitter account, Instagram account, all those things were created by my coaching staff. I think Ray Blakes had started those all originally, and then kind of turned them over to the athletic department years ago. But we weren't even able to use those. Kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, Jason, unless you got anything else, David, I wish the best for you guys, for Stanford Wrestling, for wrestling as a whole. You're a class act, and you and your program deserve more.
Well, thanks. And it's not just me, you guys. Like, this runs deeper. This is Ray Blake, Alex Tirapelli, Karen McCoy. This is so many, our alumni, our co-chairs, and this is 100 plus years of history, and alumni and supporters and our parents. And so, although I appreciate you having me on, and I guess I'm the face of the program, this is so many more people, and I'm so appreciative. And, we're going to keep fighting this fight, and I'm incredibly optimistic that Stanford will have a program moving forward. Thanks for everything.
Thank you. I love your optimism, man. Keep it up, and keep Stanford Wrestling.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. All right. Yeah, I'm fired up. I'm fired. 3 times the hair on my arm stood up today, this morning.
Sometimes people will say, we need to keep wrestling programs around because wrestling's a net positive, or it's a good thing, or it's whatever. Mm-hmm. In this case, the Stanford Wrestling coaches and athletes and all the supporters have done everything right. Jason hasn't trashed anybody publicly. He and the community has raised $12 million. They punched Jaden Abas through to All-American after losing in the first round. Shane Griffith won an NCAA title. Every step of the way, they've done the right thing.
Couldn't agree more.
There's no transparency from Stanford administration. That's a problem.
Big problem.
This is infuriating. We need transparency. We need them to fix this.
Yeah. Tell them what the problem is, and then they can fix it. Otherwise, garbage. All right. That's going to do it. Thanks to Jason Borrelli and everybody who's made an effort to keep Stanford Wrestling. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks.